That being said, let's hop into it. So it's going to be, this is obviously a much bigger, there's a lot of discussion topics this week, usually probably more than any other week we've had so far. I want to start off by giving you guys a little bit of context as to, the idea that we put forward at Cosmoverse, kind of our thinking around it, what the implications are, and then we'd love to get your feedback. So I'll invite people onto stage. Just raise your hand if you want to come to stage. We can chat through what this means for the Stride community, if people are excited, not excited, and what it means if this does or doesn't pass. So that being said, let's get into it. So for those of you who are not aware, we had a presentation at Cosmoverse where we've been working with Informal on a potential future for Stride and the Cosmos Hub. And the vision that we outlined was that the Cosmos Hub would merge with Stride, and Stride would kind of, all the existing Stride would get replaced with Atom. I want to kind of set forward a few things to kind of frame the conversation to describe what this proposal kind of entails and what it doesn't entail. So to be crystal clear, this is just an idea. This is a vision that we had along with Informal for how Atom might go forward in the future. This is not we're not forcing this through. So by no means if people are not excited, this doesn't mean this is guaranteed going to happen. Rather, we kind of wanted to start a conversation around what people think could be the future of Stride and the future of the Cosmos Hub. Definitely not asserting that this has to be the future. And so to make that even more concrete, if both the Stride community and the Cosmos Hub community are not excited, this proposal absolutely won't happen. And to dig into that one notch even further, the Stride Labs team and almost all of the Stride seed investors won't be voting their tokens. So this would only go forward if the Stride community, like all of you and people who have been involved, after the blockchain launched, if you all are not excited about this and don't vote it through, this won't happen. And I want to make it crystal clear, if this doesn't happen, the Stride Labs team is no less excited, no less enthusiastic about building Liquid Staking in Cosmos. I hope this doesn't need to be justified too much, but we live and breathe Stride. The moment I wake up, the moment I go to sleep, and often in many of my dreams, I'm thinking about Stride. And whether or not this vision kind of comes true, I will continue working as hard as I can on Stride, and that's true for the whole Stride Labs team. There's so much that excites us about Cosmos and the whole stack, and just that this one vision that we have doesn't go forward doesn't mean that we are any less excited about that vision. I want to make that crystal clear, and I want to make it really obvious to everyone that we're just talking about this potential path for the Cosmos Hub and for Stride. But if this path doesn't go forward, nothing will be lost. Everything will keep continuing on our current vision and execute on the current plan. So we want to make that just super clear before we get into it. That being said, one more maybe quick thing I want to talk about. This proposal, again, I hope this is clear by now, but no one is going to have their Stride kind of taken away from them, and no one would have their Stride taken at kind of a price that they feel is unfair. This would have to be voted on by the whole community, and I think this would realistically only pass if it was at a price that the Stride community was happy with, so something that was at a healthy premium to the trading price. So just to be really clear, this is not going to happen in a way that you're getting less than the current dollar value of Stride, and most likely will happen at a significant premium. This is an financial advice, and I obviously, I can't control the outcome of any sort of vote. But I just looking at examples from traditional finance, the way that these kind of deals typically happen is they would only happen if it's at a price that's really exciting to both parties. So I just want to have that as kind of the framing here. Okay, with that framing kind of out of the way, maybe let me just quickly outline why we were excited about this kind of idea and what we think its implications could be. But then maybe I'll also outline potential paths forward if we don't use this vision, and then I would like to invite people onto stage to discuss their thoughts and see how people feel about this overall proposal. So to start, maybe to give a little bit of framing around why we even had this idea in the first place and why we decided to kind of put it out there in the community. So we spend almost all of our strategic time thinking about how to bring DeFi to Cosmos. I think, as a community, we can hopefully agree that we've done a pretty good job over the last year of integrating Stride ST tokens deeply within Cosmos DeFi. So think about any major DeFi application in Cosmos, you'll probably see Stride ST tokens and most likely ST Atom as a key token in that ecosystem. And so I think if DeFi were to bloom in Cosmos, Stride would capture a lot of that upside. And so as a result, a lot of our strategic thinking has been focused on how can we kind of bring DeFi users in Ethereum or Solana or not even in crypto, how can we bring them into the Cosmos? On that vein, a lot of that thinking then revolves around ST Atom. Stride supports 10 different ST tokens right now, and that number is really growing every day. But most of Stride's TVL right now is Atom. And there's a lot of reasons for this. And in my mind, the most simple one is that Atom is the most money-like token in Cosmos, and it's a token that people most want to use as collateral. The primary use case for ST tokens is that they're collateral for different types of DeFi protocols. So, for example, it can be collateral in the lending market like UMI or Mars. It can be collateral for a stablecoin like USK or Silk or IST soon. It could also be collateral for perp markets, like Lavana pretty soon. Basically, ST tokens are really helpful when people want to use tokens as collateral. And right now, Atom is, the kind of most pristine type of collateral in the Cosmos. So given that, we've been talking to a lot of people, both in Cosmos, but also outside of Cosmos, about what their thoughts are on Atom, where they see Cosmos going, and then whether or not there's demand to collateralize tokens with Atom outside of Cosmos. So a really simple example, could we have ST Atom be collateral for DAI? DAI is probably the most collateralized asset in crypto, and could we have Atom be part of the collateral there? And kind of universally, the feedback we've been getting from people outside of Cosmos is that they see a lot of really exciting tech in Cosmos. They are really aware that the Cosmos SDK is, the state of the art to launch a new blockchain. They're really aware that IBC is the best protocol in all of crypto to allow two blockchains to talk to each other. Neither of these are even remotely controversial, I think. The tech speaks for itself. These two technologies are leaps and bounds ahead of the second best in that space. But a lot of people we've talked to outside the space don't really know a good way to get into the Cosmos. And they, I think, have a lack of excitement for the space, despite seeing all the really great tech and the really great communities that are developing. And digging into this a little bit more, I think a big reason that, or at least what we found from people outside the space, that they're maybe not as excited to enter into the space as they once were, is that they don't really know how to best make a bet on the great tech that's there, and they don't really know a good selling point to enter the space. So I think for most people, they see Atom as the default token that they want to get when they enter the space. But a few questions we've encountered from people is, let's say IBC becomes really huge and the Cosmos SDK is really big. Like, to make a really extreme example, let's say in 5 years, every new blockchain is launched on top of the Cosmos SDK, and every new blockchain is IBC compatible. Investors, I think, still don't really realize or can't really understand how Atom captures value in that case. In the case where, all the tech is adopted to the maximal extent, it's still not obvious to them how Atom captures that value. And I think maybe to simplify this one notch further, it's a clear narrative, I think, for Atom right now. And I think, I don't think I'm the only one that feels this way. I think we've seen a lot of kind of discourse around this on Twitter, where it's not obvious to people what the future direction for Atom is or what the underlying vision that we're trying to sell is. And I don't think it's not that we can't get there, and Atom has had a really compelling vision for many of the previous years, but I think right now we're at a kind of a turning point in the community where people need to decide on what the future of Cosmos really could be. To that end, I think we have been thinking about one potential future for the Cosmos Hub and one potential really strong narrative, which is that the Cosmos Hub could internalize a lot of the DeFi primitives and become kind of the most decentralized governance layer in all of crypto, and could capitalize on that governance by owning its own applications and capturing value from those applications kind of proliferating. So to break it down a little bit, I think one really unique value of Atom is that it is truly decentralized. I think it's one of the most decentralized tokens in all of crypto. And it's also a governance token. Think about Bitcoin or Ethereum. These are incredibly decentralized tokens, but can't be used for governance at all. So I think that these are really compelling value adds for Atom, but they don't give a kind of clear, or there's no clear way to capitalize on that right now. And one idea that we had is if Atom owned its own application stack, for example, LSTs or maybe even an NFT marketplace or DEXs, it can now start verticalizing the UX for users and capitalize on these primitives. So, give a really concrete example. Let's say Atom owned all the ST tokens. Anytime there's a new blockchain that launches, Stride could or launch, ST XXX for that new chain, and then anytime there's DeFi on that chain, that value immediately flows back to Atom. So Atom becomes the centerpiece of DeFi in all of Cosmos, and I think this is potentially a really compelling narrative to outsiders. Not the only narrative, but I think that this is one that really resonated with us, and we'd love to hear what you all think. Okay, so with that framing out of the way for Adam, well, what does this mean for Stride, and why might this even be interesting for the Stride community? So again, to really emphasize before we get into it, this is just our own personal vision for how this could go, but this won't become a reality unless all of you are excited about it. Unless there's really strong consensus amongst the community that they're excited about this vision for Stride, we're not trying to push it. This is not being forced to anyone. We just want to communicate our own vision and then get feedback from the community. So I think the fact of the matter today is that Stride is really dependent on Atom. It's the main LST for Stride, but it's also the token that kind of brings people into this space. If you think of people who are trying to launch new SDK chains in the future, a big part of that depends on how successful Atom is and how successfully the whole Cosmos can communicate to the rest of crypto. A really concrete example of this, Maker is thinking about transitioning from being smart contracts in Ethereum to their own blockchain. And they're not sure right now, but they're contemplating using a Solana fork to make that blockchain. I think it's still possible to use the Cosmos SDK instead of Solana, but this is just one example of the wider reach that Atom has, the more chains start building on top of the Cosmos SDK and can become fairly powerful. So right now, just to reiterate, Stride is really dependent on kind of Atom's adoption throughout the space. And I think given Stride's extreme reliance on Atom, I think what we are at somewhat of a decision point as a Stride community, where we either have to decide we want to lean into Stride's reliance on Atom, and whatever that may be, however we can best make Atom really bloom. How can we increase Atom adoption? How can we increase Atom's perception throughout all of crypto? How can we increase the amount of Atom that's used as collateral? That's one direction I think Stride can go. The other direction Stride can go in is diversifying away from Atom. So how can we better hook into other tokens in the space, whether that's STDYDX or STTR, or STEVMOS, STOSMO, etc.? How can we diversify away from Atom, and how can Stride kind of bolster demand for these other ST tokens as collateral? And I don't want to strongly imply one way or the other. I think right now we're presenting one potential path that Stride could lean into supporting Atom, but by no means is the only path. I'd love to hear from all of you as to what you think another potential path for Stride could be. So that's maybe a little bit of the framing for how we view this going for the Stride community. Maybe one last thing before we open it up to get questions from the audience or make this kind of more. I really want this to be pretty collaborative and back and forth. Is if this were to happen with Atom, I'd love to know what you all think would be kind of a price that would be exciting for you all. Obviously, if this happened at like $100 per Stride price, it'd be really exciting to everyone, I imagine. But is there a price that even would be exciting to you all, or no? Or do people think that the kind of vision that Stride sells is really important to you? And at no realistic price would the vision of Atom kind of be exciting. That's also totally reasonable, but I think that might be a good place for us to start the conversation. Okay, I'll open up the questions right now, and people can either put their question in the chat, or I can invite you onto stage. If you raise your hand, I'll definitely invite you to stage, or feel free to drop a question in the chat. And want this to be, pretty back and forth. Yeah. I mean, I'm not saying $100 per Stride is a realistic price, but I'm just saying, I like to open up with, is there anything that would excite you guys with the Stride price? And what are kind of the visions that you have for Stride? I think, actually, sorry, one last thing I want to say is I think we definitely could have put this out in a better way. And I do want to apologize for any sort of confusion that when we put this out. And I want to make it really clear that this definitely won't happen if anyone is not excited. And we don't mean to push this as a vision to all of you. So I really do apologize for maybe the kind of confusing way in which we put this out there. But definitely want to emphasize that this really should be a collaborative effort. $3. Okay, yeah, that makes sense. I mean, maybe one thing I'd like to dig into from all of you is do you guys see Stride as kind of part of Atom and see the Stride future as really intertwined with Atom? Or do you guys see the vision of Stride as kind of further beyond that? Do you see Stride as more intertwined with the cosmos in general and not necessarily as tied to Atom? Maybe put it another way, do you guys see yourself as part of the Stride community or part of the Cosmos community? Okay, that's really helpful, Will. If anyone wants to come on stage too, please let me know. Yeah, I don't want to just be lecturing. But of course, no pressure to come on stage. Yeah, that's really helpful. Talk 256. Oh, a lot of typing in the chat. Okay. Yeah, these are all really great points. And thank you, Robo and J Mustang, or JT Mustang as well. Yeah, well, one thing I would say, I think we were a little bit surprised and honestly really humbled by how much people resonate with the vision of Stride outside of Atom. And honestly, I think that it catches us by surprise a little bit. And it really is heartwarming to see that you guys really do resonate with with the vision for Stride and how that might be independent from the Cosmos Hub. So, anyways, really appreciate that from all of you. I think maybe so. Please let me know if this seems wrong, but maybe summarizing some of this feedback, it feels like there's a lot of interest in Stride as an independent token, and I think people really think Stride can become much bigger than just Atom and can become it's not like one of the largest tokens in the whole Cosmos, and so it feels kind of maybe premature to convert right now and become the Atom LST. Is that is that a reasonable synthesis of how people are thinking? I don't know if there's a way to react in Discord. Um, okay, I'll take those two responses as yeah consensus. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And again, I really am heartwarmed by kind of the reaction, how much people are kind of resonating with the mission of Stride. One quick thing, I see two people kind of with the little hand emoji on Discord. Does that mean you want to come up onto stage, or does that mean something else? At Cosm Awasm and Shaw256. Okay, cool. Let me invite you to the stage. Apologies, I'm honestly very Discord unintelligent.
Check on the mic.
Hey, can you hear me?
Yeah. Can you guys hear me?
Yep, we can hear you great, Shaw.
Cool. Yeah, I mean, this is my 2 cents. I'm a big Atom holder and I'm a big Stride holder. And honestly, I was quite surprised by the Atom, like the Cosmos community, the Atom community's reaction to the proposal. Because to me, it makes a whole lot of sense for basically all the reasons that you stated earlier to adopt Stride and kind of give Atom some actual like real value accrual. But I think that says something about kind of where we are in the stage of like, these communities, both of these communities accepting this or even like looking at this is like, I think what you kind of said is, it's premature. If the Atom community can't really see it, then excuse my French, but it's just too premature, right? Maybe we just keep building out like if STDYDX becomes a big thing, which I have a feeling, is going to be a huge DeFi primitive, maybe STTIA, like maybe other people the Atom community needs to see the vision, like see some of the revenue grow, see the potential that all of us in this room that come to the fireside chats every week, like realize, then once they start to see that potential, then I think it might become, maybe more of an enticing kind of proposal, or maybe something that at least give a little bit more consideration to. I'm just surprised at their reactions, to be honest.
Yeah, that makes total sense to me, Shopify 6. And yeah, I actually feel pretty similarly. I think one difficulty, and I think this is just fundamental to decentralized governance, is it's somewhat challenging, I think, to align on a collective strategic vision for really large organizations. And people already have in their mind their own personally vision for Atom, and people are kind of averse to changing that. Like there's a lot of inertia away from changing the status quo. And so I think it does take a lot of time to convince people of these visions. But I do agree. I was surprised that I think the Cosmos Hub, the community was maybe a little bit less excited about it. Although for what's worth, talking to a lot of people who kind of full-time work on BD for Atom, like people from AATAO or Informal or the ICF, I think they were fairly compelled by this vision. Although I agree, I think a lot of the community has not. Yeah. One, an immutable lawyer, this is a good point too, and I think we'll get to this in just a second. SHA-256, I'm curious, this makes sense, and I think you're highlighting a lot of the key points that might make this hard to go forward with. Do you think that Stride is already sufficiently kind of de-risked from Atom, or are there things that we could or should do to maybe diversify Stride away from its reliance on Atom today?
I think it's a great question. And honestly, I don't know. I think this whole debate and I attended Cosmoverse and kind of have been following just the greater Atom community closely for the past year. And I think the last week has really made me concerned about the future of Atom in general. I mean, I think I've been thinking a lot about that quote or that tweet that Zaki put up, a few months ago about the timeline and ETH L2's kind of copying the tech and closing in on the convergent, I don't know what you call it, evolution of where things are going in this space. And then, I don't know, I'm sure you probably saw Jose's post from Delphi on Twitter earlier today that I think the whole Cosmos community is reacting to. I think they're both really smart and insightful, tweets. And it's got me concerned about, can the Atom community, like you said, it's a very broad community and with a lot of different self-interests, and can stuff get aligned enough to to really have a compelling argument for the Atom token and the Cosmos Hub itself. So I don't know, it's a good question. I don't have a good answer for you.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. I really appreciate thoughts. And yeah, I agree. I think a lot of people are highlighting maybe the current crisis that Atom is in. And I think we also personally do feel this crisis. And this was maybe one path forward that we thought could give Atom direction. Although I think it is challenging. Yeah, to totally resonate with your points. Maybe maybe just to change topic a little bit, I see there's some discussion going on in the chat. Maybe to give a brief response to these, Travis, totally agree. I think there are a lot of underlying mechanics that to figure out. The way I was imagining this discussion, though, is first we could decide or align on maybe a strategic future for Stride and the Cosmos Hub, and decide if this even makes sense strategically for Stride or or the Cosmos Hub. And then if it's strategic goes the line, I think all these other details are incredibly important. But I think it's easier to decide on them once people kind of align on the strategic future. Not that we shouldn't discuss these questions at all, but I think they are a little bit secondary in my mind to the broader question of how should what does the future of Atom kind of look like? Yeah, and then really, to your point, to be super clear, this discussion by no means means that the Stride Labs team is not going to keep developing or keep working on Stride. We work pretty hard. I'm still a bias, but I think we work pretty hard, and that's not going to change because of this. And by no means does the outcome of this discussion change at all the things we're working on Stride. A really concrete example, working really hard right now on STDYDX, and that's not going to change just because of this discussion. Like we're still 100% committed to making Stride as incredible as it could be. Immutable Lawyer, I see you have a lot of really good points, and I think this touches upon something that Robo talked about yesterday too. And I would say this is kind of an open question, and would love to hear your all thoughts as well. But basically, around would this sort of direction meaningfully decentralize Stride more, and is that even good? Would this be good for future protocols Stride wants to onboard? Even if Stride might become more decentralized, if it's not more credibly neutral, does that make onboarding chains like DYDX or Celestia harder? And I don't have a great answer here. I'd love to hear what you all think. I could see this going either way. And then one last thing, and I'll give it up to Cosmosm. But on the governance point, I think there's different governance structures we could explore. But I suspect any sort of deal that we proceed with would not imply that all of Atom governance would govern Stride. We might have some sort of sub-DAO or allow voters to choose if they want to vote on Atom or Stride, and have some subset of voters that are maybe more interested in the Stride protocol to kind of deciding governance there. Yeah, and then actually one last thing, Cosmosm, sorry, before I give it up, but just want to really reiterate that nothing would kind of go forward if everyone here is not really excited about this, and really we're just kind of proposing our own vision for how Atom could proceed forward. I think given that everyone sort of perceives Atom as kind of at a crossroads, and there's our own personal vision for how Atom could move forward, but by no means do we want to push this on anyone, and this is really just a discussion. Okay, that being said, Cosmosm, love for you. Love to hear your thoughts.
Can you hear me?
I can hear you great.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, I think first and foremost, I think this just really speaks to the strength of Stride's team and the vision that you guys have had and how you've executed. I was personally not stoked when I saw this, but it mostly just comes down from how much I believe in what you guys have built and the project itself. So I think it's kind of a backhanded compliment, I guess, in some ways, or it's, it really just comes out of a place of people really believing in what you guys are doing, but thinking that this may not be the best decision. And yeah, I think it's, at least for me, there's a variety of reasons. One is that it does kind of look like Atom is picking a winner in Stride. I personally do think that Stride is outcompeting all the other LST providers, but it still is a little bit too early for that. And then I think that also makes it kind of murky in terms of, like you said, like integrating with STDYDX or TIA. Just like, how does this change now that like Stride could be rolled up into Atom? Whereas something like a token swap makes things a lot less messy, in my opinion. That way they have vested interest in it, but there still is a token. So maybe I could stop there, and if you have any thoughts, then I could keep going.
Yeah, first off, I really appreciate the really thoughtful way in which you put that forward. It really does mean a lot, and I really do appreciate the kind words. In terms of picking a winner, I do totally agree. I think there are a lot of pretty meaningful trade-offs to picking a winner, and there's lots of downsides. You get potentially less innovation from competition, especially in the short run. But I think there potentially are lots of benefits to picking a winner, specifically for Atom. I think Cosmos right now has a relatively small amount of DeFi, especially relative to like the total market cap of the space or the total amount of interest that there is. And I think it might make sense to start consolidating that and improve the UX so we can help bring in more users as opposed to kind of increasing that competition. And also, again, I'm super biased here, but I think Stride is already relatively like the majority of all ST token volume on the Cosmos, and it might make sense to start trying to see if there are ways we can increase the overall demand for ST tokens. But I'm obviously really biased, and I do recognize there's lots of trade-offs for why we might not want to try a winner. And this idea of a token swap, and maybe let's expand this because I think this is a really great point. So I think what we proposed is maybe the most extreme version of this vision that would be kind of an all-in commitment on the hub of going down this route. And by no means do I think we have to go down this route. And if anything, I think my if I had to bet right now, I think people won't. It's very unlikely that this version of the deal is what ends up going through, and that's totally fine. I think our main goal here is really to give a vision for how Atom could proceed and how the Cosmos might evolve going forward. But our vision doesn't have to be everyone else's vision, and maybe we'll have some average of all the visions. Really just want to start a conversation for people around what Stride could be and what Atom could be. And I think you highlight a really good way this could happen, which is maybe Atom commits to doing some token swap to Stride or uses some percent inflation to accumulate Stride over time. And that might be like a good way to ease into it that still gives Stride, meaningful alignment with Atom and gives Atom a really great narrative that I could use going forward. So I'm fully on board with this kind of proposal. Really, to be clear, I would be on board with any proposal that both communities are excited about. Like I think of myself more as like a steward or like a tool to execute the community's vision. I'm proposing my own personal vision, but if I'm happy to execute whatever people think. Another one that I've seen people talk about online is Atom doing some sort of smaller acquisition of Stride tokens. So either maybe like another way to think about this is a token swap, but people can opt into if they want to do the swap. So people, on the Stride side, like everyone can decide, hey, do I want to allocate some of my tokens to Atom instead? And Atom decides how much they want to do overall. That's one potential path forward that might align Atom and Stride communities more closely. Okay, I'll stop there. Yeah, what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, I think that all makes a lot of sense, and I think a lot of these ideas are just to be fleshed out. I think that for me at least initially, what was coming up was more the idea that Atom itself, like you mentioned, it does have a bit of an existential crisis right now in terms of its narrative, and it doesn't have a clear value capture. And it's really cool that a lot of teams, including yourselves, are working on ways to fill that gap. But I think the big difference is that Stride clearly does have product market fit, though. It's already generating a ton of substantial revenue. It's growing enormously. And I think that is really the divide for a lot of people, is we really see Stride's vision. Atom's vision is still somewhat unclear. And I understand that, in many ways, Stride does rely on Atom's price, but Stride can, still 10x from here just by capturing most of the market share for Atom itself. And so it's kind of a difference between, I don't know, it might not be a great analogy, but, investing in a gold miner versus, wanting to buy gold and just seeing the profitability of one versus the other. And not to mention as well, too, that there's, there are a lot of other protocols in the Cosmos space that like Stride can offer services to and partners. So it's not just Atom itself. And so we're really hitching ourselves to Atom's wagon by doing this.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And I actually really love that analogy. I think that really does resonate with me. This is a little bit like Stride as the gold miner, and we're saying, should we merge with, maybe the like gold? So maybe kind of a wonky concept. Yeah, that does make sense. And I do agree. I think Stride is achieving some level of product market fit, and we have seen really great growth, particularly in like some examples of coming inside of Atom, like Evnos. I think over 10 to 15% of all the Stride or all the staked Evnos, I think is through Stride right now. And we see that number kind of growing also for a lot of these communities that have blossoming DeFi ecosystems. So I think you are really correct in that Stride is beyond just Atom, and it does have this kind of index bet across Cosmos. The thing that I guess worries me a little bit is right now it's not obvious which of these DeFi systems will take off. And I think there is a lot of work that's us as a team, I think we have to prioritize which of these tokens do we want to put most of our time behind. And we can definitely, not that we don't put our time behind all of these, but BD is like a fixed resource. And so we have to think about how do we want to distribute this. And so I think there's one path where we kind of try to distribute it across a lot of different tokens. Maybe we try to support every single DeFi ecosystem. Maybe we start focusing a bit more on DYDX or Slushia or some of these other bigger tokens going forward. I think right now almost all of our attention is focused on Atom, and maybe that's not the ideal way to go forward. One really quick thing, not to change the conversation too much, but just addressing some of the comments I see in the lounge chat. And sorry, it's maybe a little bit scattered. The chat is there's a lot of stuff going on. But on this thing of not many stride holders will be here, and how can we increase distribution? So totally agree. I think this chat is maybe more tailored to people who are really close to the stride community. We're personally trying to increase distribution as much as possible. So we had a really long Twitter space yesterday that was recorded, and everyone should feel free to listen to that. We'll also have more this whole week. I believe we're going to have one tomorrow. My guess is we're going to have one on Wednesday and Thursday and Friday as well, like Twitter Spaces, depending on demand. Our goal is definitely to make this as widespread as possible to get as much feedback from people. One thing I really do want to emphasize, and I thought we have already done this online, but I think it's not really getting across, and so I totally take ownership over that. I think we could have communicated this in a better way. But the TLDR is definitely not that this merge is happening, and there's nothing people can do to stop it. I really want to communicate the point that this is just the starting point of a vision that we have for Stride and the Cosmos Hub, but this vision is not being executed. It's not going to be forced to anyone, and if people are not excited, their Stride is not going to be taken away. So sorry for sounding a broken record, but this definitely does not mean that your tokens are going to go away. And to be super clear, while I can't control any sort of price that such a deal would happen at, I think it is extremely unlikely that such a deal will happen at a discount to market price. So people should definitely not be worried about that. So again, sorry for really hashing this point a lot, but just want to make that as clear as possible. And if people have ideas for how we can better spread more discussion around this, please let us know. I think we put up an FAQ on the Cosmos Hub forum, and I believe the Stride Twitter as well, but I could be wrong on the Twitter. But we'll try to be putting out more content like that. We're trying to put out what we call a Swift booklet by Thursday that will cover a lot of the issues here. But please let us know if there are ways you think we can increase distribution here. This is a top goal of ours. But just want to really emphasize the outcome is not that we're going to be merged by unknown conditions. Definitely won't happen unless the Stride community is really excited about it. Okay, maybe just giving a quick TLDR of how I feel like people are reacting so far, and then would love to see if that resonates with you guys or where you might want to take discussion from here. But it's that. Also, I see one person is requested. So the thing I'm getting is people see Stride as being really indexed to the whole Cosmos and has achieved a lot of PMF, and they don't necessarily want to tie that to Atom. And such a deal might happen at a price that really doesn't credit Stride's potential future vision. And I think the direction we're going from here then is how are ways that Stride can better disentangle itself from Atom and diversify its revenue streams going forward, and how can Stride maybe also help boost DeFi all throughout Cosmos, not just in Atom. That's my quick synthesis. Please let me know if that's different, what you guys think, or if there are important points you want to focus on. I'll invite Phoebes to the stage as well, because I think they're raising their hand.
I'll just make one last point. I think that was coming up in the thread quite a bit, and at least with me and some people that I've talked to, is also just really the optics of this as well too. It does seem like you are wanting an early exit in one way or another. I understand that you guys said that you are committed to continue to work on Stride, but at least from the outside, it does look like you're trying for an early exit, and it made people question the commitment and conviction in the project. Because I think on its face value, like every single person, in the Atom community and Atom token holders they all see the value for this. It's very clear. It's much less clear on the Stride side. So the fact that this proposal came from Stride as well too, it's very perplexing. So I'd love maybe if you could talk about that a bit more, because the upside for Atom is very obvious and much less so for Stride. And it's just really hard. Stride has like what 1.5% of Atom's stake right now, and so it's just so early on, and to be able to come up with a price that actually makes sense. And I think that is the part that took me back, is that this came from you guys, from the core team. It just the value is so obvious on Atom's side and less so on Stride, and that's where I have a few doubts personally.
Yeah, that makes total sense. I really do appreciate you voicing this. And I just want to emphasize, for anyone else who maybe has similar kind of doubts or has things that maybe are more critical, but they're worried we're going to react poorly, please voice any and all of your doubts. I really do appreciate it, and I want this to be as transparent as possible. So if anything that's on your guys' mind, please give voice. And I really do appreciate that, Cosmosm. But this is feedback that we've gotten, and I appreciate you kind of bringing it up and giving us the opportunity to talk about it. So to make it super clear, I would not view this as any sort of exit for the Stride team. And I imagine any sort of way that this deal would go through would involve both a pretty long revest for the Stride core devs as well as a KPI-based vest. And so to maybe dig into that a little more, I would imagine that such a deal would make the vest for the core team longer than it currently is. So you have some vesting schedule. It would probably extend that vesting schedule to be longer, but then it would also probably add KPIs. So something like this deal would only go, the core team would only get their tokens if let's say 3 different KPIs are hits. Maybe the KPIs or something like okay, you want to get 15% of all Atom stake through Stride. We want to make sure there's at least $50 million of non-Atom TVL, and we want Stride ST tokens to be deployed in 5 different ecosystems inside of Cosmos. I'm making these specific KPIs up, but some sort of really aggressive sort of KPIs. And then the Stride team would have to both hit those KPIs and wait out their best. So I think by no means would this be kind of an early exit. And then maybe to dig into why this proposal came from the Stride community, when it feels like it is giving up kind of early, really it's selling Amazon 2001. I think the way we personally saw it is that Stride right now is really tied to Atom. And at least myself personally, and I can't speak for the rest of the team, but just my own, this is Vishal's personal thoughts. I was feeling a bit of angst around the future of Atom and kind of where I saw the future vision for Atom going. And it's not to say that I'm not really excited about Atom. I live and breathe the whole Cosmos. I'm deeply excited about the whole space, and I really do think that Cosmos SDK and IBC are 2 of the most incredible innovations in all of crypto, and I'm so firmly behind them. That's why I devote my life to this whole space. But I was feeling a little bit of worry about where the future of Atom could go. I think that there was a little bit of uncertainty, maybe the grand vision for Atom. And this is also something we experienced when we talked to other investors in crypto, that kind of they weren't as excited about Atom as they were before, and they didn't really see a clear value capture mechanism. And I think as of right now, it's the Stride token is really deeply tied to Atom. It's not only the biggest token Stride supports, but also the most money-like token, like the one that people are most likely to want to use as collateral. And I think when we were talking about this internally for quite a bit of time, we felt a crossroads of either we have to diversify away from Atom or see if there's some way we can kind of give a really compelling vision for Atom. And again, to really emphasize, this vision is not to be the vision that everyone else resonates with. And we absolutely won't move forward with any vision that does not align really closely with the Atom community and the Stride community. So this is not at all us pushing forward this narrative. I really just want to give my own personal vision for how I think this might proceed, but it doesn't have to be the one everyone else agrees with. And we were happy to do whatever vision people find. But to your point, I think you made a point that this is really compelling for Cosmos Hub, and people can really see how this adds a lot of value to Cosmos Hub. I think if that's true, it's very plausible that this might happen at a price that is really exciting for the Stride community. Like, again, I'm biased here, but I think there's a compelling reason this might, really give Atom such a more clear narrative and might make it like a top 3, top 5 token in all of crypto. And if that happens, maybe the price is something that's really attractive to Stride token holders too. This might not be, and again, this might not be the direction I want to go in, but that was kind of the thinking from our end. But to reiterate, definitely exit liquidity. This would be a much longer vest with really aggressive KPIs. So the core team be really bought in. And this deal does rely on the Atom community kind of seeing this vision and thinking this might be really attractive. But if not, again, there's no issues there. I don't, Luis, to this point, I don't think we're long Atom, short Stride. If anything, I think we're maybe implying the opposite. I really do believe in Stride, but I'm feeling a little bit of angst around not having a clear vision for the future of Atom, and this is maybe one way that we can try to give a future for Atom. Real quick, I'll let Phoebes kind of. I know you've been on stage for a while. We'll love to hear your thoughts, and then Immutable Labs, I have you next, then Robo, then Shabu. I'll try to invite you onto the stage.
Yeah, thank you, Vishal. So I have two main questions. I'll get to the first one first, but the two questions are, what's a reasonable number? And then what's the plan if it doesn't pass? So I'll get to the first question first. So me personally, I don't know how much I love the idea of merging, but if we can get a 10 to 20x on the Stride token, I'd be an idiot not to take that guaranteed return. So me personally, I care more about what's realistic. So like what's a reasonable number? Let's say the community settles in on a number. And after passing that through Stride governance, the next step is getting it through the hub. And Stride Labs you guys will have to advocate for this proposal and make a compelling case for the buyout value. And I'm curious, from your angle, what's a realistic number to get it passed? Where do we start getting into unrealistic territory? So let's say we have a number at $200 million. Not only what is the number, but what's the breakdown of that number? How are we chopping that up between the 100 million total Stride token supply? Would the buyout involve the fully diluted supply, or can the supply be modified because of certain buckets of the supply can be eliminated from the fully diluted value, and thus the buyout number? This can create an avenue to bring a substantial return to Stride holders while simultaneously keeping the total buyout value low enough to be feasible to the hub. And then the last question for this subset, or like within the question, is, would there be a lockup of the liquid Stride tokens post merge? So like, is there going to be, is the Stride community going to be having to, like, can they sell their Atom right after the merge, or would they be like, these would be important questions that I would need to know before I can even entertain the idea of getting it through.
Yeah, that's a really great question, Phoebes, and I really appreciate that. Yeah, it totally makes sense. This is on your mind. This is on a lot of people's mind. And yeah, I'd love to give my own personal thoughts, but maybe to really emphasize, I can't, I'm just, this is just Vishal speaking, so I can't, say definitively what the hub or Stride communities would want to pursue, but I can give my own kind of personal musings on the matter. But ultimately, it's up to both communities to decide. So I think the way I see it, and again, I might be biased, but I think this vision of the hub is owning the application layer for itself and owning the core primitives throughout the Cosmos, throughout the IBC world. I think it's pretty compelling and could add billions or tens of billions of dollars of value to the Cosmos Hub. And I think if the community can be sold in that kind of vision, it's pretty not crazy, I think, to imagine some sort of deal that's multiples of the current Stride price, maybe like 2-3x. I suspect it's going to be really hard to imagine any world where it's 10x though. And these numbers were just kind of very roughly talking to a few people at ICF and Formal who maybe are kind of thinking about this vision and could see a future for it. But it's really hard to know without knowing how both communities react to it and think of this vision. And to even really doubly emphasize the point, I think given it's so given it's so early, it's possible that we think of a path forward that doesn't involve just a total buyout, or maybe it might be, instead of converting all of the Stride supply, maybe it would just be some subset, like token holders who want to diversify away, or maybe some small, maybe it's like the Atom community commits to buying, using 1% inflation to buy Stride throughout time. So there are other ways this could happen that wouldn't imply a strict price, but quick TLDR, maybe something like 50% to like 3x is potentially attractive. And to Lisa's point, I think token swap might be a way this happens. Two quick things, sorry, let me address the vesting question, and I'll come back to maybe some questions in the chat. On the vesting, I think it depends a little bit on the deal price. My guess is the vesting will be very short or non-existent for community members, and likely be very long and pretty aggressive for core devs. So for like myself or FireStride Labs team, the vesting might be on the order of like many years and might imply really hard KPIs. But for the rest of the community, I think it'd be very unlikely that such a deal would pass, and would be likely to pass in the Stride community, I think would have a really short vesting. Again, it's really possible that the Stride community and the admin community are really divergent. There's no vesting schedule that both would agree on. But I think if a deal would happen, it'd probably be pretty short vesting on the Stride end. Two quick things I want to cover just on the chat before we move to more questions. One, on the hub paying for this through inflation. Is that even possible? I think the way I see it is, I think the hub really needs a really compelling narrative. And such a narrative is not something that is going to improve the hub by 10%, 15%. Like, when I think of the future of the Cosmos, I'm not thinking of a future where instead of Atom being worth 2 billion, it's worth like 2.5 billion or 3 billion. I'm trying to think of a future where Atom could be like the second, third, fourth biggest token in all of the crypto. And such a vision, I think, requires some change for Atom and some willingness to invest in that sort of future. And I think any sort of like mint of like 5% on FTV, I think the hub should seriously consider. And I'm not asserting this point of view, like if the Atom community isn't if this is really unattractive Atom community, I think that's totally fine. Like, I'm not, this is just my personal view, but I think like really defining a clear narrative for Atom and willingness to commit to the Atom, to that vision, I think requires the hub to be willing to spend some amount of money. I don't think this is totally crazy. Like, the hub spends so much money every year on inflation. And I think inflation is a much worse use of capital than like funding a BD team, for example, or funding development teams. And I think the hub really decided to think seriously around what is its current spending, where does it want to go, and what is a realistic path to get to where it wants to go. Again, this is my personal opinion, but I don't think it's a realistic to say the hub has this grand vision, but it wants to get there without any sort of spending. Again, it's just my personal view. To answer one quick question before taking more question in the chat, before taking more questions in the voice chat, Moss from DCA, and Bob, is there any risk that Stride might lead to USD-like collapse? I think this is not very likely. Stride doesn't involve any sort of like trust-based properties to maintain its peg. It's actually a fully collateralized LST. Like all DeFi primitives, there's always a risk of some sort of bug or hack occurring on Stride. We try to take a lot of measures, I'm happy to go into that, to try to prevent or mitigate any sort of bug or hack. But there's no sort of like trust-based DPEG that might happen because Stride's fully collateralized. Okay, that being said, love to move on to a few more questions. Immutable Lawyer, I have you next, and then Robo, I have you right after, and then Shabu, I have you after that. Immutable Lawyer, if you want to take it away.
Yeah, thanks a lot. It's a pleasure to meet you all. It's my first time on these FireStride chats, but I did hear the announcement. I did have a front row seat to the announcement on Cosmo First. I had some mixed feelings in relation to it, but I've now reached the conclusion that it's a very interesting sort of approach to take, because I don't think there was any right way to announce it. If you had everything hashed out and then you proceed to the announcement, you will get the backlash for not involving the community. And if you do it in this way, you will get backlash for not hashing it out entirely. So there was no perfect way to do it, but it does take some guts to do so. So kudos to you on that. And I do think that this is a very, very optimal way to do it, because at the end of the day, the tokens are, held by token holders who, you need to get their input, you need to get their thoughts, how they feel about this and all that stuff. So that's as a sort of primer on this discussion. I think from a decision perspective, there is a divergence in relation to how the Cosmos Hub will see it and how Stride holders will look at it. I think from a Cosmos Hub perspective, they will want to look at this from a commercial perspective. So is it well worth it for the Cosmos Hub to take on a sort of, I would not call it an additional responsibility because software development will still be undertaken by Stride Labs, but will they want to convert or use a part of their Atom to get a bit of Stride? I think so. That's the commercial part of it. I think from Stride perspective, the way it was portrayed on the forums, it seems to be that the main point here is to increase the decentralization of the protocol, right? So taking that into account, I do not see this moving the needle a lot from a decentralization perspective. So I think this is a wide spectrum and something, that in the IDX I'm very vociferous about and have been and will always be, I think, because I am an advocate for open source software and decentralized software, right? So if you segregate it, it's legal decentralization, economic decentralization, and technical decentralization. From a conversion point of view, converting Stride to Atom, I do not see that the needle will be moved a lot from any of those three facets. Development will still be with the Stride team, obviously incentivized by KPIs, but it will still be undertaking most, if not all, of the development of the Stride protocol. From a legal decentralization perspective, Stride Labs will be the company undertaking the development, so in that regard, not a lot has changed. Maybe a bit will change from an economic decentralization perspective, because rewards will be then distributed to Atom holders, in general, if they do have a reward mechanism or a reward incentive in that regard, or if it is inputted, if it is in there. So it does not move the needle a lot, in my opinion, from that perspective. What we need to assess, and I think what the community needs to assess, because I'm new here, I would not consider myself part of the community as of yet. I think I need to earn that with a lot more engagement. But I think what needs to be considered is that if the main scope here is to increase the decentralization of the protocol, and part of increasing decentralization is having increased governance participation, will Atom holders actually participate in the progressive decentralization of the protocol by proposing and submitting votes on proposals within the Stride community? I think that's what we need to look at, because if from their perspective this is purely commercial in nature, but from our perspective we envisage that this will increase decentralization because it will increase governance participation. Is that actually true? Will we see, for example, if there is a bit of voter apathy at the moment and, we have 100 voters, let's say, an average of 100 voters, will we see an increase by 200 and have an average of 300 voters after this conversion? So I think these are the things that need to be actively discussed. I know that, from a token holder perspective, the main query will be, listen, how much will I get for my Stride? Fine. But in the longer term, if you're an avid supporter of the protocol itself and not by virtue solely of holding the token, is this a net positive in the next 3, 4, 5 years by converting this? Or is this maybe a bit short-sighted, maybe, underlying market conditions, and this will give a bit of runway even to the token team? So these are the things that I think merit discussion. I think, as a last point, the beauty of Cosmos is that it's very similar in its ethos to TCP/IP. I think something that Antonio from the IDX and something that I resonate with, that I agree with a lot, and why people should use Cosmos is that you can create a product that is chain agnostic. You would not even know that you're utilizing Cosmos. And I think that's something that the YDX has managed to achieve, even with its one-click integration with Scred Router and XLR, for example. I think having Atom govern the protocol itself will sort of eliminate any potential possibility of being chain agnostic for the Stride protocol, if Stride wants to be chain agnostic. So I think it's sort of having the elimination, or sort of, it will result in the elimination of ring-fencing Stride from Cosmos itself, and will result in Stride being part of Cosmos and purely part of Cosmos. So I think these are the things that need to be discussed. I do not have the answers to all these queries and questions myself, but I'm just putting up some points, because there are some very important points that I haven't seen avid discussion on the forum. So that's all from my end. Again, kudos for taking this approach to sort of discussing this in a very open manner with your community. It's something that I hadn't seen in the past, and I was a contributor at various protocols, so it's something that I hadn't seen, and something that after a lot of deliberation with myself, which is worrying in and of itself, but it's a very good thing to see, and I think it's something that we should see more of. But yeah, those are some points from my end and some things that I would like a bit more discussion on.
Yeah, I really appreciate all of that really thoughtful feedback from the lawyer. That is incredibly thoughtful, and you clearly spent a lot of time thinking about this. And yeah, I appreciate your high quality points. One really quick thing before I get into it also, I just want to say I'm a huge fan of what you all are building at DYDX. DYDX was the first ever on-chain application I ever used. And in my mind, I think it still has by far the best UX of any crypto application. Not even close. It's like so far ahead next best one. And then what you all are doing in decentralizing the protocol with Moon to Cosmos DK is so commendable. And I think really grounds the whole space and the vision that crypto was first sold on. Could crypto be this decentralized alternative to centralized finance? Anyways, unrelated to this discussion, I just want to say I'm a huge fan of what you all have done, and your whole team is so capable and so smart. And one way it comes through is just in your really high quality thoughts here. So maybe one quick thing to get into in terms of how we did this publicly. So just want to, again, I apologize if we did this publicly in a way that was confusing or didn't make it clear what we were proposing, or made it seem like we were trying to propose something that was fully decided and we want to push this throughout the community's consent. I really do apologize if that's something came across. It's not at all how we meant it to. Our thinking was we did really want this to be so community driven, and we didn't want this to be kind of a repeat of Atom 2.0 where insiders or maybe kind of out of touch decide on a path forward or strategic vision, and that gets rejected because it's so insider driven. Really, because this really touches at the core of both the vision for the Cosmos, broadly, Atom in particular, and Stride in particular, we wanted this to be really community driven. And I think given that this isn't a very typical approach for these kind of decisions, it has been a little bit maybe challenging to communicate that, but I do appreciate the kind words there. Okay, now getting into the meat of this. I think to say it back to you, the question I really got is, does this make the token or protocol, Stride protocol, more decentralized? How exactly would Atom be involved in governance going forward? And to your point about TCP/IP, does this make the Stride protocol less chain agnostic? And does it make it more opinionated, and does that kind of hurt adoption going forward? So really great questions. So let's talk about maybe the first one, which I think is the meatiest, and then go into the rest. Does this make a token or protocol more decentralized? And is the main scope of this proposal to make Stride more decentralized? So I think it depends a little bit on how you define decentralization. I think one way that I would define it is, are the interests of the token, are those sufficiently decentralized? So there's not one party that is central, like, has a controlling interest in the future of the protocol, and how much can the protocol kind of commit to a path? I think the harder it is for a protocol to deviate from a strategic path, it's usually indicative of the protocol being more decentralized. I think in both of these metrics, Stride would become meaningfully more decentralized if the protocol's governance was done by Atom, in that Atom has a truly decentralized token holder base, and it's really commendable. Probably is one of the most decentralized protocols in the entire world. And this would, in turn, I think, make the Stride protocol, they feel more confident that not one team is controlling the future of the Stride protocol. To your point, though, I think there are a lot of drawbacks from this, and one really meaningful one is governance. It's not obvious how governance would go from here, and it's very possible that governance would either be too slow or ineffective after this sort of deal. I was imagining a future where Stride governance is not fully done by Atom. Maybe, for example, some subset of Atom token holders would vote on Stride governance. Maybe when you stake your Atom, you could decide if you want to vote on Atom or Stride or Neutron. This is one potential example. Maybe there's a sub-DAO that's formed that has kind of slightly faster moving abilities, and it can be overridden by Atom governance. But I think definitely would not want a future where Stride is fully, all protocol changes have to go through overall Atom governance. I totally agree with you. I think this would be kind of a non-starter and really impede protocol progress. The one thing I want to emphasize, and this also touches on Golden Ratio's points in the chat, I think the main value add I'm seeing here for both Stride and Atom is not necessarily decentralization, but rather this future vision for what Atom could be and what Stride could be. And I think decentralization is part of that, but I don't think it's the main value driver. And again, apologies if this was communicated poorly. It's totally on us. But in my mind, I think that the really short synthesis for the value add to Atom is that I think it gives it a compelling narrative for how it can capture value across the Cosmos SDK and the IBC stack. To your point, I think TCP/IP is a really amazing technology that is agnostic and is widely adopted. I think Atom, the whole Cosmos community, has made something equivalent with IBC and the Cosmos SDK, but there's no clear way in which Atom can capture value on that. And to reiterate maybe an example from earlier in this discussion, if we saw a future where the Cosmos SDK was the number one or the only stack that people use to make blockchains, and every blockchain was IBC compatible, it's not clear how Atom would get value in that world. And I think as a result, we see a real lack of interest from VCs or institutional capital on deploying into Atom. And I think part of the goal here is thinking of some potential path to make Atom a shelling point for the Cosmos SDK and for IBC. So if investors have a thesis that options are going to be big, that the Cosmos SDK and IBC are going to be big, that they can go in and confidently bet on Atom. And I think having Atom own its own DeFi primitives that are used throughout the stack gives it value capture across DeFi in the whole space. And that to me, I think, is the real value capture for Atom and the reason it's good for Atom. And I think for Stride, the potential value add is that one, it can capture some of that value in Starter for the Cosmos Hub. That could be billions of dollars a year. But also that Stride could further align itself, I think, with Atom and help gain adoption, either help push like Atom as money or Atom as collateral all throughout crypto. But to a lot of the really excellent points kind of raised here, I think a lot of people's visions for Stride extend beyond Atom, and this is definitely a meaningful trade-off. And it might well be that we fall on the wrong side of this trade-off. That even though Stride would help Atom, it gives up too much, and it's not really worth the end agreement. I think it's totally reasonable as a path here, and if that's the kind of takeaway the community has, we're totally bought into that. Yeah, so maybe just a quick TLDR of that. Decentralization, I think, would change, and I think it would improve in most metrics, but to your point, governance and some other metrics might make the application stack worse. But I think the real value add and where I think we should focus on is the main value to Atom would be getting this narrative on value capture across the Cosmos. And I think that's really what I want to focus on. I believe there was a second question here as well, which is like, what will the future look like? This actually might have been Keep's question, so Paul just didn't hit that one. What will the future look like if this deal didn't go through? I want to really emphasize the Stride Labs team, Stride contributors, would be no less enthusiastic about Stride. We're already incredibly incentive aligned, both financially by like on-chain investing, but also just like philosophically. We truly do believe in Cosmos and IBC. Like I myself am just such a huge proponent that app chains could be the future, especially for larger applications that own their own distribution. And we would be no less enthusiastic about executing on this vision. And we do want to make Stride succeed fully, regardless of what kind of future outcome we go towards. Maybe one last thing that a point you made, Immutable Lawyer, which is, would this kind of make Stride less chain agnostic and make it more opinionated? I think this is probably the biggest downside in my mind to this sort of proposal, is it makes Stride more dependent on Atom. And this might make other chains that come into the Cosmos, like the Maker chain, for example, make them less likely to use Stride because it becomes more opinionated. Yeah. And yeah, I think this is a really, really excellent summary. Does Stride want to be the one that pioneers this Cosmos Hub owned application stack? Is that a direction that Stride should go, or is it even Stride's job to help give a vision for Atom? Maybe it's not Stride's job. And two, if we do that vision, does it make it harder for Stride to go to expand beyond Atom? And I think these really do get at the meat of the issue. To Relam's point above, before we get into Robo, says, why are we focusing so much on Atom's vision instead of Stride's vision? And I think this is a part of what I would love to hear from all of you. Do you think there's a real future for Stride outside of Atom? And if so, how can we realize that vision? I think it's not controversial to say today Stride is really dependent on Atom, and the future of Atom is a little bit in flux. And I think if we don't go forward with this proposal, there's lots of other things we can do to diversify Stride's dependence on Atom. But I think that requires a lot of actionable steps. Maybe that's doing a lot of BD with DYDX. Maybe that's doing a lot of BD with Celestia, or Maker coming into the Cosmos. Maybe it's spending a lot of work to increase the DeFi on Atomos. But I just want to make it more of a conscious choice that we make as a community, as opposed to something that we kind of stumble upon with Atom kind of at a loss for direction. Okay, I know that was a lot. Robo, you've been on stage for a while. I'll let you take it away.
Yeah, sure. Hey, everyone. I have a couple of things. I guess the first will be like my ideologically naive take, just a comment, but then I have maybe a more practical question after that. So I guess as a start, I just think that I want to kind of focus on a comment that you made about like external investors. You mentioned that we're having a hard time right now convincing external investors to enter the ecosystem because they don't really have a way to capitalize on the proliferation of the Cosmos tech stack and IBC. And I think historically that has been Adam, and I think it's very reasonable to focus on that as the token that is representative of valuable to the hub or to the ecosystem. But I just want to point out that I think that very easily the STRD token immutable. Do you think you could mute your mic? Thank you. Yeah. Go ahead.
Oh, so sorry. I was just saying immutable. I muted your mic, but I think you should be able to unmute yourself. But if not, just please send a message and I'll unmute you. Yeah. So go for it, Robo.
Yeah. So I think very, very easily that this STRD token is also pretty well positioned to be the value capture mechanism for the proliferation of the Cosmos tech stack, and potentially even at this point in the hub's life cycle, it maybe even more so than Atom. I think Atom has very much has an existential crisis, and that as an ecosystem we should be looking to reduce our reliance. And this isn't just Stride, but every project in the ecosystem should be looking to reduce its reliance on the hub, because one day I think it's very feasible that one day we may have to survive without it. So that's just kind of like my my maybe naive take, is that I believe that strongly, and Stride as a project and you guys as a team and the STRD token itself to potentially be positioned to take that position. The second thing is more directed around just like the practicum of this. For example, I addressed it like the premium. There's a way to get a premium for STRD holders without dramatically increasing the market cap price at which the hub buys Stride. And I know this has been floated by several people now, but there are a lot of tokens that are held by the protocol that are not held by any one investor. The incentives fund, the community growth fund, the community pool, and I think there's one more bucket that I'm missing here. But I think a helpful first step would be to kind of align ourselves all internally on a couple of things. Like the first being, can we just burn all of these tokens without replacing them for an equivalent value of Atom? I would imagine the one point of contention is the incentives fund, and that's sort of like the second thing is how do we decide what incentives will be needed post merge, and specifically like what quantity would be necessary to accomplish those goals if the merger does move forward, to incentivize things like STDYDX or STT, other things like that.
First off, thank you so much for the really thoughtful response, Robo. I mean, not as a surprise. I really appreciate your time here and yesterday on the spaces too. I think you always give really excellent feedback and clearly very, very thought through. So maybe addressing both of these points, and then related to one point in the chat as well. First, on the ideological point about external investors, it really does mean a lot, and I'm really humbled that you think Stride could be the token that people who want to bet on the Cosmos could end up taking on. And I think we hope that would happen as well. Like that speaks to a future that I think would be really exciting. I think thus far the market price of Stride doesn't reflect this future that well. Like Stride is trading at I believe a 4% real yield right now, and it's a little bit unfortunate. But I think when you have a live token, it becomes people really anchor to that, so it's hard to get people thinking that Stride could be this vision of this token that grabs all the future Cosmos revenue. Not that this can't change in the future, but I think right now so much attention is spent on Atom. Even Osmosis, which is like the next biggest token, has just a small fraction of the attention that Atom has, and this is something we could solve. And this is something that we could do a lot more. We could definitely put effort into making Stride, more out there as the future of Cosmos, or something that can become a selling point for investors in Cosmos. I think it's not there right now, but to your point, even regardless of how this deal goes through, it's probably something that we should spend more time kind of pushing a narrative towards. I agree. I think it is right. And then to your other ideological point around every project we're looking to reduce their reliance on the hub, I think this is a pretty reasonable take and very viable as a path forward. Although I think it might not be necessarily the path that is kind of de facto going on right now. I think everyone in ecosystem, whether implicit or explicitly right now, is kind of reliant on Atom as either a distribution model or as a way to get users. Even Osmosis, which I think has the most users in the space, is fairly reliant on Atom. And not to say that this can't be changed going forward, but I think it probably does require some sort of concentrated effort that requires coordination amongst lots of teams. For example, maybe concentrated BD efforts from Stride and Osmosis together to bring people into the space. One fun example that I've heard from Sunny is we should try to make Dogecoin a Cosmos SDK chain. So maybe it just requires tailored BD efforts from non-Atom tokens or non-Atom projects. But I think right now every project is really reliant on Atom. But maybe the path forward is not to think of a future direction for Atom, but rather see how we can reduce our reliance. And that totally does resonate with me as a potential path here. On your second question on the practicality, this is a really great point. We would not need to convert all the current Stride allocations, and there's a lot of them that we would not need to be converted going forward. I think, at the very least, this is my personal opinion, I think there's roughly 20 million a Stride allocated from incentive budget. I think at least half of that we don't need, given that Stride has become much less reliant on incentives and much more reliant on POL or foundation-based liquidity. And so that's at least 10 million we could save, and there's probably another 10 million Stride from the security fund, the community pool, and the foundation tokens that could also be reduced. And so my guess is something like 20 to 30% of these tokens would not have to be converted going forward. Depends a little bit on what the Cosmos Hub would want after such a deal. Like if they'd want to allocate incentives to increase in liquidity or have some security reserve. But at the very least, I think all of these funds could be cut by half without any sort of serious risk. I would say roughly 20% might not be needed going forward. Although it depends a little bit on how the community kind of sees it going forward. To answer one quick question about Phoebes that Phoebes posted in the chat. What would happen if this proposal kind of gets shot down? And what would happen? Would we see a series of proposals, and how would this uncertainty affect the Stride token? So this is a really great point. I think our goal is not to drag this out indefinitely. It is definitely distracting and not at all kind of productive to have this be going on for many months. I think our goal, so in two really short kind of points about our goal, I think one is we really want to make this a forced conversation about the future of the hub and the future of Stride. I think right now the hub is kind of sliding into this narrative, but kind of by mistake. I just want there to be really conscious thought around what people want the future of Atom to be. And if they want the future of Atom to be this kind of really neutral token that doesn't own any application stack and becomes kind of like Bitcoin with governance, maybe, it's totally fine, as long as it's something that people decide upon together. And for Stride as well, people think Stride does not have to be reliant on Atom. Stride should have diversify itself and think of all these revenue sources away from Atom. It's also totally fine. I really just want that to be a conscious choice that you make. And I hope we can come to a place in the next couple of weeks where we have some consensus around future direction for at least Stride, if not Atom. To flip and coming, make it really clear, I'm saying these are two separate decisions that the Stride and Atom community have to make. So the Atom community should decide if they want to own applications, and the Stride community should decide if it wants to increase its reliance on Atom or try to diversify away. And for example, there are ways that Stride can increase its reliance on Atom or lean into it. That's not just a total merger. There have been a lot of examples of directions given thus far. or Stride community can decide that no, actually we should double down on other ecosystems like Osmosis or Evmos or DYDX and start trying to diversify away from Atom. But I think the fact of the matter is right now Stride is really reliant on Atom, and just want to make that a really conscious choice that we make. Do a golden ratio, maybe to double click on this. I think the reason for Stride right now is that we're incredibly reliant on Atom, and it's not obvious what Atom's future narrative is, or how Atom can really become the shelling point for a lot of DeFi going forward. And this is, I think, if we take the assumption that Stride is really reliant on Atom, then it becomes a really kind of big question around how Stride can make Atom succeed. But there might be a really viable path that we go towards that is not Stride has to make Atom succeed. Rather, maybe Stride can diversify its token away from just being Atom. Maybe it goes to different types of ecosystems in the Cosmos, like Osmosis or Evmos, DYDX, or something more. And maybe to kind of put a pin in, put it in Phoebes. So I think I do like to see some certainty in the next couple of weeks, and we'll put out some content. Maybe this maybe saying how we can see some direction for Stride Atom. But to a lot of points that a lot of people raised, there's been, I think, other potential paths that could happen. Like to Luis's point, maybe a token swap, maybe some streaming purchase of Atom by Stride, or streaming purchase of Stride by Atom, or some sort of like, maybe a token swap is making one route this might happen. But I think we would like to see clarity next couple of weeks. So that being said, Shaba, you've been on stage for a while. I'll let you take it away, and then maybe you can answer those questions and some of the others in the chat.
Sure. Thanks, Vishal. Yeah, so I think just about all of us, and certainly you mentioned just the questions about Atom's future and how we move forward. I've been skeptical just that we can accomplish this through a merger, or that's necessarily the best way to help Atom, which, and certainly we, at least as we are now, as we've all said, we succeed only if Atom succeeds. So I just, and you've talked a little bit about this, or actually a fair amount about just conceptually how you think, Atom can move forward and a vision for that, when you talked about, having some of the core primitives of the Cosmos as part of the hub. But I think it would be helpful also just, for you and the team, just if you can be quite specific, I think it would be helpful to understand, where you see you can help. So, are there 2 or 3 things that, let's say the merger went through tomorrow and we all agreed on a price, we're all happy, and suddenly you guys are part of the hub now. Is there an idea for, what are the 2 or 3 things in the next 6 months you'd like to get done that you really think could add value to Atom and make it better? And then also, is there a couple things as a core idea that you really think, you'd want to accomplish over 2 years? I think that would just clarify some things. And again, my just background intuition is that, some of these things maybe we can get done or help get done. I'm not sure we should be the instigators or the main party carrying the ball, really. But I think it might be possible that we can get them done in a different way, even if we don't do the merger. So anyway, just wanted to throw that back to you, and the more specific I think we can be, in what is a very vague situation for Atom's future, I think that would help inform us, really. So I'll pass it back to you. Thanks.
Yeah, thank you so much, Bob. I really appreciate that, and that makes a lot of sense. And I really appreciate the thoughtful question, both today and also yesterday on the forum, or sorry, in the Twitter space. I think it was super helpful. The way I see it, I think there's a few really concrete things that Atom could be doing that isn't being done right now that I could see the Stride team potentially doing. Although by no means do I think the only the Stride team can do this. I think other people could do. But right now, for whatever reason, I think the incentives are not aligned in such a way where any team is really doing a world-class job at this. I think the first thing that I like to see for Atom is really pushing to see it being used as collateral outside the Cosmos. So some examples of this are like DAI. Like there's no reason Atom can't be collateral on DAI. There's no reason Atom can't be collateral on Aave. I think we should be doing a really concentrated effort to push Atom and in particular ST Atom as collateral all throughout crypto. I think it's a really strong way to drive in new users from outside the space. So I think that's the first thing I would do. The second is increase the UX of using Atom. So I think right now, if someone comes into the space who's not familiar with it before, it's extremely hard for them to figure out where the relevant websites are for them to even use Atom. Like you have to go to Stride, so you have to know what Stride is. You have to go to Osmosis to trade. You have to know what Osmosis is. You have to then go to like Umi, you know what Umi is in order to like go to lending protocols. I'm sure everyone in this chat is familiar with these, but talking to friends outside of the space, I think it's a really meaningful UX hassle to get people into the space, and I think this is becoming a big deterrent to get more users into the Cosmos. I don't want to index too heavily this example, but I think one protocol that did a really good job of verticalizing the UX was Canto, which made like one website you can go in and do all the DeFi primitives that are existing on Canto. I think one thing we'd like to do is make a similar like amazing UX, like one website where they can see all the places they can use Atom. So yeah, that maybe will help bring in more users from outside the space. And the third thing I think we could do a really good job of that is really concrete is really pitching this vision of Atom to investors outside the space. Whether or not people philosophically feel good about this, I think it's a reality that most ecosystems in crypto only can succeed if they get capital to help fund really grandiose visions. I think right now there's been a real lack of VC investment in the space. And I think that a dedicated Atom team could help sell this vision of Atom being a selling point for DeFi activity. So maybe to reiterate, the three really concrete things I think we can do. One is push ST Atom as collateral all throughout, but not only Cosmos, but crypto. Make the UX a lot better and keep verticalizing the UX on the space. And then lastly, help pitch investors outside the space on why they should hold Atom, why you should make Atom a core part of their crypto portfolio. So I hope that maybe concretifies things a little bit. One last thing here, though. To your point, this doesn't just have to be something that we do if Stride merges with Atom. And I would also be totally happy in the future where Atom consciously funds these sort of initiatives independently of the Stride team. I think that's also totally reasonable. But my personal view is I think Atom does need to spend a lot of time thinking about ways that it can help increase demand for Atom and how it can help bring attention back to what I think is one of the most exciting tokens on crypto.
I think those are good. I mean, those are three really great ideas, I think. And yeah, I mean, one thing that I think Atom struggles with is just, and it's somewhat, you alluded to it before, is just, how do you have a really focused team going out and executing, in a very big decentralized ecosystem? And that's sort of what I like about you guys in this smaller community, really, that you can go out and execute very, very decisively. Anyway, so I'll leave it there. But no, thanks. That really does help in making precise some of the stuff, which I think a lot of us would agree would need to be done to get Atom to a better place. Thanks.
Totally. And I really appreciate the really thoughtful questions, as always. Maybe to address some of the comments in the chat, and I think this maybe is Black Lodge had this question, but I think a lot of other people had similar thoughts. Is there an off-ramp for this conversation? Is there a way we can kind of proceed that reduces the amount of uncertainty? And I think our hope is that we can kind of off-ramp or think of this path forward in the coming, like, let's say 1 to 2 weeks. And whether or not that is, okay, people are excited about a merger, we should now start thinking about more specifics. Whether that might be like, is there a different direction we can go in as a community? Is there something else that would excite either the Atom community or the Stride community? It seems like one potential opportunity is a token swap that will increase alignment between Atom and Stride and maybe give this narrative for Atom. But I think ideally we'd find something in the next, like, let's say 2 weeks to have a more concrete plan forward. after we gather. It gives us like roughly 3 weeks of gathering community feedback, which should be enough. Maybe by the end of this week we'll get somewhere too. I think actually got to this point. I think if the consensus is that we should not move forward, we should kind of keep going with the current path. I think the team will put out a statement that says, "Hey, the feedback has been people are not that excited about merging with Atom, and people really do love the Stride vision." That's super reasonable, and we would just put out a statement saying like, "Hey, this is how people feel. We're going to now continue developing just on Stride, and Stride, we're no less dedicated and no less excited about the Stride vision." That's a totally reasonable path forward. And yeah, to your points, I think we do want to reduce the uncertainty as soon as possible after we get clear feedback. Robo, I totally agree. I think one reasonable path forward might be a treasury swap, and then Stride liquid stakes the Atom that it receives. I think that would actually be really exciting and might be a compelling path forward after getting everyone's feedback. But one thing at least I would push the Stride community to really think about, and one thing I'll try to push the Atom community to think about, is what are ways that even if the token swap goes forward, that Stride can really consciously focus on ecosystems that it cares about. Maybe we should have a path forward that people decide, okay, here are the ecosystems that the Stride focus on, or maybe that's something we can think about as a community. And then for Atom, I'd really like to see some discussion in the Atom community around what they perceive their future as, or what is a way that Atom can really accrue value going forward. But really, I really do appreciate this feedback. And I think we will. I'll see if we can tweet something out about this today. Yeah, I really do appreciate that, and yeah, we're always looking for ways to better communicate this. And so I'll talk to the rest of the team and see if we can put out some tweet that maybe does like a really quick Q&A on these 3 questions and talks about what the path forward might be like. To really do appreciate it. Okay, that being said, Flip incoming. Let's take your question. And then I think maybe we can start wrapping up or seeing how people feel about this talk and what maybe the next steps are. Flip incoming. Let's take it over.
Yeah. So thanks for bringing me up. And I will say you've kind of addressed some of the things that I wanted to talk about. I know I've been kind of critical of this on the forum, but I do want to also say that, I appreciate you guys bringing it to the community. I think in good faith. I have criticisms for how the discussion went, and I frankly think from the perspective of an actual deal happening, it's really unlikely unless the hub is coming with something concrete. I think until then, it's just very likely we're spinning our wheels on nothing. And so I would, as you said, a quick conclusion to this to sort of help the uncertainty would be really valuable. Yeah, I guess I would say, overall, the reaction that I've had and that I've seen from the rest of the community is you guys have been really focused on the health of the ecosystem, the health of the Cosmos Hub, and sort of nebulously what's good for Stride as well. And I think it's really important to have those perspectives, but the challenge you're going to have in anything where you're truly destroying the Stride token is that you now have entrenched interests. And, I'm one of those, and I think a lot of the people in the community are. And I don't necessarily hold a lot of Atom anymore, right? I swapped most of my Atom into Stride actually because of the same kind of points that Robo made around my feeling that Stride that really can capture the overall growth of Cosmos. I feel very strongly about that, and I think a lot of folks here probably do as well. You've got something special here, right? We're at the bottom of a bear market, but Stride is positioned with ICS already very aligned with the Cosmos ecosystem, well thought of in the general community, and there's a lot of growth ahead, and it feels like the exact wrong time for an acquisition from my perspective. So I would love to see more discussion on things that are a little less destructive, which may be token swaps and things that sort of help deepen alignment with the hub without sort of destroying what we've got here. So I guess I'll stop there. It wasn't a question, I think, in large part because you addressed what I wanted to say before I unmuted, but I appreciate the conversations here and the way you guys have approached this.
Yeah, I really appreciate those kind words and the really thoughtful comments. It really does mean a lot, and I think we really underestimated how enthusiastic the community is about Stride in particular, and not just the Cosmos as a whole. Like I think one of our priors going into this is people are excited about Stride because they're excited about Atom, because they're excited about Cosmos. And I think we've found that people are actually really excited about Stride because provides a vision independent of Atom, and a lot of people are bullish Stride, bearish Atom. I think that's something that we didn't really expect kind of going into this, and it really is really really like genuine and warm feedback. I really just appreciate it. To your point, I think maybe one thing I'll talk to the team about, one thing we can start exploring, and we'll put out more public content about this too, is are there other ways besides a full merger that would make sense here? Maybe a token swap to a lot of people's points already. Maybe some sort of proposal to the Cosmos Hub to buy some amount of Stride every week or every day, or maybe some ability to buy all the ICS chains, and maybe that's a good way to kind of align interests and give a narrative to Atom. And then we'll also I think a lot more on our end about what are ways that Stride can either help ensure the survival of Atom or the thriving of Atom without a full merger, or are there good ways that Stride can help bolster DeFi outside of the Cosmos or outside of Atom in particular. And so, anyways, I don't want it to seem like this feedback has all been for nothing. Like we really are internalizing it, and I think we have some viable paths forward that do kind of, I think, synthesize some of this feedback, and hopefully will make everyone in the Stride community more excited. Yeah. Anyways, there wasn't a clear answer to anything, just kind of my thoughts going from this, but I really do appreciate all the feedback that everyone has given, and hopefully, we're coming to a place that feels more reasonable. Maybe just a quick TLDR of all my takeaways from the space so far, seeing if that is a good. I'd love to hear from you guys if you think this is a good recap of the space, and then I'll get a potential path forward. And if people want to keep staying on that space, I'm happy to stay on, or we can table it and reconvene tomorrow. Okay, my quick TLDR is I think people are really excited about Stride. Thanks a lot, Immutable Lawyer. Really appreciate your time here. These people are really excited about the vision for Stride, and they see that vision as grander than just Atom or any of the individual tokens that Stride supports. And they think it would be a shame to kind of give up on that vision so early and just kind of commit ourselves to being only Atom. At the same time, I think people are not really convinced that Stride needs more decentralization and don't really see that as a compelling value add to Stride after this merger. And if anything, the increased reliance on governance might be kind of net negative. That being said, I think people think that there's not a clear vision for the Cosmos Hub going forward, and it's not obvious that Stride wants to fully keep marrying itself to Atom. And if we don't proceed with the Sora deal, I think the paths forward are either that Stride should try to diversify itself away from Atom, or that Stride should see if there are other ways, or Stride should see if there are other ways that we can align ourselves or help Atom. Maybe that's a token swap, maybe that's some sort of purchase of Stride by the Atom community. But maybe those are paths that we should be exploring in addition to some sort of full merger. Does that seem like a reasonable synthesis of the conversation so far? I don't mean to assert that, just trying to, it's been a really long conversation, trying to find a quick way to boil it down. Amazing. Yeah, then I really do appreciate this feedback. And yeah, we're going to think really hard about if there are other paths that we want to pursue here, and if there are ways that Stride can diversify itself more. And just to really emphasize, not to sound like a broken record, but just want to make it really clear, we won't proceed with anything unless both communities are really excited. The core team doesn't even vote their tokens, so this would really be a community has to be excited about, not like Stride Labs excited. Regardless of what happens, we are true believers in this whole space and this ecosystem, and I am so firmly committed to that vision. And I will never, I'm not going to give up on Stride just because anything happens here. We're going to keep building for the long haul. Make that super, super clear to everyone. And we will try to reduce the amount of uncertainty in the next, let's call it 1 or 2 weeks for sure, and try to outline a more clear path forward so that we're not bogged down by these discussions, indefinitely. Okay, I hope that everyone got something valuable out of this. Maybe we should start wrapping up, but if people have any more questions they think haven't really been addressed, please raise your hand while they choose to the stage or drop in the chat. We can talk about it. Maybe let's say we'll do a hard cutoff at 2 Eastern, which is 15 minutes from now. There's no more discussion. But if anyone wants to discuss things, happy to kind of discuss from now to 2 Eastern. And we'll do another spaces tomorrow and Wednesday, and we'll just by no means the end of the discussion. I really do appreciate all of your time, and it means a lot that you're all so interested. One last thing I'd like to close with is it really does. It's really heartwarming to see how much the Stride vision resonates to people, and it's something I really didn't anticipate before this. Thank you all. Oh, one last plea that I have from people before before maybe closing it out. We're gonna definitely try to put out more concrete Twitter content about this that helps demystify what's going on. And we'll definitely. I think people have a lot of great ideas here about things that are common questions that not everyone has time to listen to 4 hours of spaces to help people become more concrete. But one ask I have is if you guys see any sort of misinformation about this on Twitter, I would just please ask that you try to help clarify it. We're going to do the same too, but we're really limited on bandwidth right now. So you'll see people saying stuff like this is going to be a forced merger or anything you think might not be accurate. Or just please ask that try to help clarify those things when possible. We're going to be doing the same too, and this has been a kind of big focus on us. Yeah. Anyways, thank you all so much. I really do appreciate your time. Yeah, thank you, Luis. I really appreciate your feedback. Akigog, your final question. I think there is no risk of Stride being removed from ICS. My impression is Stride is like the biggest success case for ICS, and I find it really hard to believe that Adam would remove Stride, and it'd probably be, honestly, a huge foot gun by Adam. I think this would be really value destructive by the Adam community. So anyways, I don't think Stride's at any risk here. Thanks, Fabu. Any last questions for anyone? If not, I'll end the space, but totally happy to keep talking if people have any questions. Of course, thank you all for the really thoughtful questions. I really do appreciate it, and I really appreciate how civil everyone is being about the whole discussion. I know there's a lot to digest, and it really means a lot that you guys are thinking about it so rationally. And Robo, thank you for attending even while you're on vacation. I really appreciate it. Take care. Have a good time in Kauai. Thank you, Moons. I really appreciate you being here and helping, let people on stage. I'm super tech illiterate, so it means a lot. I don't know why the frowny face, really. Don't worry, it won't go unless everyone's excited about it. Unless you get to a deal that everyone's happy about. So don't worry, this is only going to be a positive. I promise. All right. With that, let's end it. Thank you everyone for the time, and I'll talk to you all soon. Cheers.